Welcome to the robin wool painting tutorial. First, we're starting with the wet felting process. If you haven't done wet felting before, make sure you watch the how to wet felt video. You can find that on my YouTube channel under the tutorial section. That'll tell you all the steps for wet felting, which I'm not going to go in depth here. So I'm going to show you how to lay out the project. So first we're going to take our light blue color and we're going to take little pieces of roving, pulling them off the end of our roving, and lay them first in an up and down direction for the first layer. And then the second layer will go left to right with the fibers, just doing a thin layer of each. And then for the third layer, we will be going up and down again. And then we'll start to add some of our other details. So we're going to start to add parts of a tree. So I'm using some of my brown roving. And then I pulled apart the roving lengthwise to create these long strips of brown. And these will make my tree here in the background. And then I'm going to make some leaves. So I have a dark green and a light green. And I'm going to set those out just kind of in a leaf shape, some kind of like teardrop shape a little bit. And I'm doing a little bit of the darker green on the bottom and putting a little bit of light green on top of each leaf. And you can make as many as you like. I'm just placing them randomly here around my tree branches. And then we're going to actually start felting this and wetting it down. So you want to take your mesh fabric and lay it over top and then start wetting it down. I'm using my hot soapy water in my water bottle with holes in the top. And we're going to soak it down first, and then we're going to add a little bit of soap and start felting it gently with my hands. Remember, this is sped up, so I'm going a lot slower than this in person. Just wanted to start felting it a little bit so then we can lay out the robin on top of it. You can smooth out your edges by folding them under a little bit. And then for the robin, I'm going to start with the orangish red chest. And the robin, the way this is facing, this is a kind of a front view of the robin with his head turned to one side, and we'll see one side of the wing. So you want to have a nice big broad chest, and then it will curve down, and we're going to add the wing in here with some black. The black on top will be the head, and we're just going to do the basic shape for the robin for wet felting, and then we'll add the details for our robin when we needle felt it. Adding a little bit of white here at the bottom. And you can see our tail feathers coming out from behind the bird. And a little bit of gray as well. And then we'll add our fabric mesh and wet down the robin part of the wool painting now. And we'll continue to felt. Just make sure you're being careful that you're not moving your fibers around too much and distorting your work. I like using the bar soap so I can add it right directly on my fabric mesh. It works very well. I'm going to felt it with my hands again for a little while. Just rubbing back and forth. I'm just going to check it, make sure everything's laid out still the way I want it to, and then we'll start the rolling process. After you've rolled and felted your piece, make sure you check it after you fold it and everything, gone through the whole wet felting process. Make sure to do the pinch test and then rinse it out completely and set it out to dry completely before we start needle felting. So for needle felting, I have just a few colors, the black, gray, the orange, and a little bit of white for the most part. We're going to work on the head first. So I'm going to make sure it still has a nice shape. So you just want to have a nice small rounded head. So from the crown of the head, it's going to slope down over the back of the head, and then the beak will come out just below the crown of the head. You'll have a little bit of black, and then we're going to add our yellow in here for the rest of the beak. So robins have a nice strong fairly long beak, but long and narrow, and it does have black that goes over the top and the bottom of the beak. So I'm just felting my yellow out into a point, and you want the tip of the beak to be more narrow than the base of the beak at the head. And then a little bit of black down the center of the beak. And I'm adding a little bit more black wool to the top of the head, just to give it a little bit bigger of a head. And now I'm blending together some of the orange and a little bit of brown or black. And I'm going to add this right below the bottom of the head. This will give it a little bit of a shadow, a little bit of a darker color here. And then I'm shaping the chest of the bird a little bit. It'll round down with the head shape and then come in a little bit, and you will see a little part of the other wing here. And we're going to add some highlights here on the chest of our bird. I'm adding just a little bit at a time. I can actually see through the white to the orange. It's not as bright white as it looks on the video. You just want to add a little bit at a time, still letting some of that orange color bleed through. I'm blending a little bit more of the orange and the brown and adding it on the bottom and next to the wings. Now we're going to work on the head a little bit more and do the eye as well. So I'm just taking a little bit of gray to add a little bit of shading and highlight to the head of the bird. And then to start the eye, so I have a little bit of black. I just put on in a circle for the eye, just to reinforce that nice deep dark black color. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white around the outside. I'm going to add a couple thicker white spots and kind of just outline the eye, but not a complete white line all the way around. And a little bit of white coming off the back of the eye, behind it. And then we'll add a little highlight in the eye to make it more lifelike. So I usually add one bigger spot and then a little smaller spot underneath of it here in a moment. Just that little bitty white spot there. And it just gives life to that eye. Now we can work on the wings a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit more dark black wool here and make a nice strong tip of the wing. And on the tail feathers, I'm adding a little bit more black to make it a little bit longer. And you can almost see two distinct tail feathers coming down, or what looks like two. And then I'm going to add some shading here with some gray wool. So you can see a little bit of highlight there on the underside of the tail. And then we'll add a little bit of white, which is actually some other feathers underneath of the bird. And now we're going to work on the legs. So I'm blending a little bit of a darker brown color with the black, just to give it kind of a darker brown color. So we're going to have a nice strong leg come down. And you always want to have them come down on an angle from the bird, because birds usually have their legs kind of ready for springing into flight. And then we're going to add the little toes. So you want to add 4 here, 3 coming off the front and 1 kind of coming off the back and curling around to hold on. And then we'll do the same thing for the second leg. And I don't make these legs parallel. They usually come out a little bit more so they're closer near the body and farther apart wherever they're standing on. And then we're going to add their little talons. So I'm using a little bit of black here, just a tiny bit to make little pointy talons. And a little bit more brown to the legs. And our feet are good to go. So we're just adding some final details here to the wings. I just add a little bit of gray over top. And then I'm going to add a little bit of gray to make more individual feathers. The gray is more of a highlight, like the sun reflecting off of their dark black feathers. Than an actual gray color on the bird itself. So to make these fine lines, you just take real small pieces of wool and you can pull your roving lengthwise and just take a tiny bit at a time. And you can make these really long, thin pieces and then very deliberately stab with your needle down on that little strip on the whole length. And a lot of these final details are a little bit of my improvements along the way. Every piece I kind of add its own flair to and its own creativity. And then the last absolute detail we need to have is the tip of the other wing. So we made the other wing on the right side there, the little bit you can see, and then it will come back behind the bird and you can see the wingtip underneath. So that's our completed bird. If you have any questions, please comment here. And thanks for joining me for the robin. And we'll see you next time. Happy felting!